Well, again, good to see you, and thank you for showing up to practice. That's for we are, after all, a sangha. Yeah, in the study of Buddhism, we talk about three treasures, of three jewels of Buddhism as Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The aspect of Buddha is the standard to be awake to this life as much as possible. Dharma, the teachings of life, the teachings of reality that are constantly being taught. The practice is to receive those teachings, and then sangha. As a community, we we support and encourage one another. There are times where some of us may be having a tough time, times where others are having a wonderful time. There's always a mix in the human experience. But if we show up as we are each time, then practice becomes embodied as something that isn't dependent upon how we're feeling or what the circumstances are. In fact, I'd say it's talking at the beginning about just having a discipline of a daily practice. That's something that can be relied upon when circumstances do become particularly challenging. It's easy to forget about. Ironically, uh, sometimes practice is put aside when life becomes very challenging. But if a practice is maintained and really embodied, then it becomes a real refuge for navigating challenging and difficult conditions. For myself, those challenging and difficult conditions often come from dealing with other people. You know, maybe it's the world of people. I was watching some time ago. Somebody told me about a show on Netflix. I think it was called Chimp Kingdom. It's a really beautiful show. It's about this largest chimpanzee troop and they follow the life of these different personalities, and it's extraordinary complexity of the social dynamics and the way they relate to one another, all of the power dynamics and desires and violence and all of these different things. And it's a good reminder that um, we ought not to forget that we are primates, right? And as advanced as we may feel as human beings, I think we can agree that we are also driven still by our base desires often. And as the Buddha pointed out, we deal with attachments and aversion. This attachments and aversion, the clinging, the wanting things to be um, a certain way, if possible. I had an experience of that today with wanting my Sunday to be a certain way, right? Like, and have a certain time to relax or certain things to happen, and then reality comes along and tips over the apple cart, and it turns out that today is not going to be the way that I would like it to be. That happens many times over, right? So we have an attachment to many different things. Some of those attachments, of course, are positive, like love for our families, love for ourselves, attachment to food, to attachment to breathing. For things that there are necessary things that we're attached to, but there are also, of course, negative attachments. If we hold on to those in the face of a change in reality, then typically frustration and even suffering as a result. So that's so also with aversion, wanting to turn away or not include certain aspects of life, to avoid and to push away. Sometimes we're able to do that with some small amount of control to arrange the circumstances in our life. But always there are examples of aversion and attachment too that are unavoidable. Many examples, even in the most typical or average of days. Our Dharma practice then is to not to bring an end to attachment and aversion. We could set that up as a goal to eventually transcend attachment and aversion. If anyone does, please call or email me to let me know. I'd love to call and celebrate with you that you have transcended attachment and aversion. I would also like to know what that's like, right? For myself, right? We live within attachment and aversion as part of the human condition. But there is a lot that we can do to let go of suffering. There is a lot that we can do to reorient and align ourselves with this reality that is constantly unfolding. Its appearance is change, like the eye is drawn to the change. We see circumstances changing. But when we sit, our practice is to turn to that which is unchanging, to experience that which is unchanging. Now, usually to say something like that is a challenge to the mind, like the thinking mind. And it's like, well, how do you realize or turn to something that is unchanging? It's like, do we not experience thought and sound and sensation? We are encouraged at the beginning to open our heart and mind to listen, to have a broad awareness. What is it that is unchanging? If we look for something unchanging, we don't find it. We just see the forms and experience the changing conditions. The appreciation of the realization of that which is unchanging is approached in a different way. And I'm going to talk on a koan that touches on this experientially in meditation. Our just sitting practice and the practice of Zen, Zazen, just sitting, Shikantaza, just sitting practice, then we make the body straight we set up our posture. Again, we get to the seat, the bell is struck, and then it is experience, watch, allow, don't move, let go of picking and choosing. Simple and as difficult as to sit, be in contact with everything that is, however that appears, whether it's internally perceived as me, self, I, thinking mind, or breeze on our skin, or a pain ache in our knees, whatever is perceived internally is awared, right? So it's experienced. We don't call it good or bad, just allow. And then externally, car on the street, somebody slamming the door in the next room who forgot that it's time for your meditation, right? Whatever is occurring in that external sphere, again, awared, allowed to be as it is, not cherished and not pushed away. This is how we realize deeply into the nature of attachment and aversion. Because as we experience in our sitting things that perhaps we have a nice meditation space set up, and then somebody's car alarm goes off, or a cell phone rings. That's a classic these days, right? In the middle of a sit, somebody's phone goes off. You always see, I always, you feel bad for the person who's just like has that sudden realization where it's like, oh crap, it's mine, and then the fumble in the pocket, and you try and turn that thing off. But if we watch our mind's reaction to such phenomena, if in the mind we're like, oh, that's bad, that's ruining or spoiling or interrupting my meditation, right? We can easily fall into that snare, but that's really a snare. The way to just sit is something occurs, experience, and watch the mind's reaction, the me, I, self's reaction that comes out of aversion or attachment to phenomena, and then just allow that too, but don't identify. Don't identify with that voice or that reaction. That's difficult for most of us. It takes practice. But again, if you sit and take the you out of it, like you can have a rest and instead rest in the arms of nature, rest in the arms of Buddha, whatever way you want to put that, you can watch yourself and your own reactions too, as well as everything else that is being experienced from a place of vast empty awareness. From, one way to put it is to watch from 20,000 feet. Just experience, allow, and let go of distinctions. That's really the art of just sitting practice. And if you find it very difficult, that's because you're practicing it. It's very difficult. Very difficult. But once it's accessed, once you find that shift, you're able to sit in that way more and more. That can be leaned into. That can become real. That can become a refuge. You see the shift in the mind that we get caught in the way that we perceive and identify around content. As you get to the koan. So this is from the well-worn Book of Equanimity at this point, case 48, Vimalakirti's non-duality. So the main case, attention. Gosh, I almost skipped over the most important word. Say student first, teacher second. Attention. Vimalakirti asked Manjushri, what about a bodhisattva entering the non-dual Dharma gate? Manjushri replied, as I understand it, with regard to all dharmas, there are no words or speech, no revelation or knowledge, and it is separate from all conversation. This is entering the non-dual Dharma gate. Thereupon, Manjushri questioned Vimalakirti, saying, all of us bodhisattvas have each had our say. Venerable sir, now you should expound about a bodhisattva entering the non-dual Dharma gate. Vimalakirti maintained silence. This is Vimalakirti's answer to the question, what about a bodhisattva entering the non-dual Dharma gate? There's a bodhisattva, Zen, and is a form of Mahayana Buddhism. There are other lineages, of course, the Vipassana lineage, which is very strong core of insight community of the desert from the beginning, comes through a Theravadan lineage, comes through a different channel. We have a hybrid in one sense between us as a teacher and a Dharma way. But I think that's quite fitting for our practice in the United States. We don't have to stick so rigidly to one way of doing things. That's typically never a good idea, to stick with rigidly with one way doing things, because what happens is we can conflate a way with the way. And any way that we have to explore reality, a way, is limited because it's being created by people, and people we're limited, right? So it's not just one way. There's a multitude of ways in Buddhism and in other practices too, outside of Buddhism. We use a way. But Buddhism, for myself, and particularly Zen, has proven a very excellent way to explore reality. Right? That's I was interested in that from the beginning. Not interested in Buddhism per se, but interested in knowing, in trying to understand what this curious mystery of life is actually about. That's something that I haven't exhausted in 52 years for sure. And I was never comfortable from a young age with being able to ascribe to a clearly defined worldview that was boxed in and had somebody telling me this is the way. Right? So in our way, we have, Theravadan and the Mahayana Buddhism and other influences too. Vimalakirti was a famous lay practitioner, a secular practitioner, like like us here, living in the world. We have a job, a family, relationships. Had to. Well, I was going to say had to go to the grocery store, but I guess things were a little different in that period of India. But had to procure, food and clothing and a home. All of those things that are involved in living an everyday life, different and a different culture, a different time, but also similar. But Vimalakirti became famous as a wonderful teacher and exponent of the Dharma, even as a lay person, not as a member of a spiritual community. He wisely avoided that trap, right? So hadn't have to fall into living, somebody who lives full time at a Zen center for about 20 years. To hats off to Vimalakirti. Vimalakirti's out in the world, and it said that he became ill. He was sick, one of the hallmarks of human experience. And the Buddha, who's same time as the Buddha, the historical Buddhist, he said to people, go and check how Vimalakirti's doing. And it said that people were a little scared to go and see him because he had a fearsome reputation for challenging their understanding of the Dharma. And if you were kind of senior in the Dharma or had some certification or a title, then especially Vimalakirti would love to disavow you of your accomplishments. So none of the bodhisattvas wanted to go. Of course, this is something of an apocryphal story here. This is a Buddha surrounded by, it said, all of the bodhisattvas. That's someone who's close to being a Buddha, right? And also 32,000 enlightened people. Apparently, they were all there. It's nice. That's nice. It's encouraging. It's just like, wow, there were 32,000 enlightened people. Like, what's our excuse, right? There's so many, so we can put ourselves in that group with the Buddha. Nobody wants to go to see Vimalakirti, and Manjushri, who's the Bodhisattva of wisdom, says I'll go. Says I'll go and check in on Vimalakirti. And this is where this exchange takes place. Right? It said that they'd been having a debate with the Buddha and all of the bodhisattvas about this question about what is how do you enter the non-dual Dharma gate? How do you enter the non-dual Dharma gate? And what is it to do that? It's another way of phrasing what I was speaking about before getting into the koan, in talking about our practice of meditation. You don't walk through the non-dual Dharma gate. You don't take a clear path through the non-dual Dharma gate. It's a gate that you have to just, step right through. It's a leap, or it's a realization that there's no gate or barrier from the beginning. A gate is a metaphor here. It's a gate. It functions as a gate or a barrier. When we don't understand something, then it's a barrier or a gate. Right? So we're trying to understand or work something out. It's like trying to find the right key to a gate, trying to go through something. So if you're trying to realize what is non-duality, it's like, well, what is the way to do that? What is the gate? This is the question. Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, threw that question into ChatGPT and then pulled this answer down. As I understand it, with regard to all dharmas, there are no words or speech, revelation or knowledge. It is separate from conversation. This is entering the non-dual Dharma gate. So Manjushri talks about it in terms of negation. It is not something. This is a classic Mahayana Buddhist technique, a negation of things. There are no words or speech, no revelation or knowledge. It's separate from conversation, but it strikes at something important in Dharma practice. It can't be explained. It's not satisfactory to have an intellectual or conceptual understanding. A conceptual understanding of something is a picture of something. An explanation of something is an image of something. It's not the thing itself. This is what Manjushri is pointing out. When it comes to the Dharma, it comes to reality. When we talk about it, we can't help but create something of a mirage or a picture of it. Right? This is why Dogen, Master Dogen, the Zen teacher, said, teaching Zen is one mistake after another. Or another Zen teacher said, to talk about Zen is to try to sell water to people sat next to a river. Right? So this is where it comes up with this like wonderful irony about talking about the Dharma. And yet, Manjushri is saying what it is not. It is not word and conversation. It is not illustration. But he doesn't say much about what it is, but rather goes with what it is not. This non-duality, we don't really talk about it much in Zen. And in my own practice, I went through a lot of years of practice with koan study and the formal curriculum here at Yokoji, which came through Tenshin and Roshi and Maizumi Roshi and so on. At the end of that study, or toward the end of that study, maybe a year or two before I concluded, a good friend of mine introduced me. He gave me some talks by Eckhart Tolle. Is it? I never know whether to say Tolle or Tolle. It's one of them. And an Adyashanti, and it was still CDs at that point. And I thought, why is he giving me these? You know, just a little bit late. What? And I didn't play them for a while. And then I started to play them in the car. I used to play a lot of music, but I noticed that I have this thing, if I play music, it really gives me earworms. And then when I sit, I listen, it's like I have Taylor Swift playing in my head or something for half an hour. And believe me, you know, I love Taylor Swift, but not when sitting over and over or something like that. So, but I like to listen, you know, that like to listen to Dharma talks, and since that time I've moved on. I really listen to a lot of podcasts while driving, or um, usually while driving. So I listened to some of these talks, and I was blown away by the simplicity of the non-dual or more Vedanta style of realization. And I would say to people, you should listen to this. And I'd share some of these talks. And invariably, people would get back to me with just like, I don't know what you get out of that, or I didn't like his voice, or I don't know, I didn't, you know, and often the response wasn't so good. And so sometimes the response was good. It was a mixed bag. But what I came to realize was with some of, and it broadened out into I read a lot of Krishnamurti, who I really still appreciate very much, and some Nisargadatta Maharaj. If these are names that are not familiar, I encourage you to Nisargadatta Maharaj. I'm not going to try and spell it. And Ramana Maharishi. Some of these teachers have wonderful expression and are worth exploring. And I appreciated what they had to say and their insights into non-duality and into present awareness. It was very helpful. But I also came to realize that my appreciation or my insight into their teachings, it helped to do about 15 years of Zen meditation beforehand. You know, that was, you know, to do the practice that makes you ready also to receive teachings. So when I look at it these days, I see that, and this has precedence in the tradition, there's entering through principle and there's entering through practice. Through principle, you are awake, present, and aware. This is enlightenment. Okay, carry on. That's the principle. For most of us, that's like, well, thank you for that. That's awesome. Not quite swallowing all of that down. I don't feel like the Buddha right now. I like the earth is spinning on its axis, and I have awoken to great enlightenment. And so we practice. We practice. There's the principle, and there's no barrier to the principle. But for most of us, we need to practice with some method over and over, often for some years or for many years, in order to bring the principle to life. Right? And this brings us back to this practice, sitting, not just sitting, but also present awareness, mindful attention during the many activities of our day. So Manjushri goes to see Vimalakirti, checks on his health, and explains they've been having this conversation, and says to Vimalakirti, all of us have had our word, talked about how to enter the non-dual Dharma gate. What do you say? How would you explain it? And it said that Vimalakirti remained silent. This is Vimalakirti's expression of entering the non-dual Dharma gate. There's a comment later that says Vimalakirti gave a thunderous silence. Right? It's not a silence that's just like, I don't know, let me think about it awkwardly while not showing anything on my face kind of silence, right? But rather an understanding silence. What is the gate? In this case, the non-dual gate, or the gate to awakening, the gate of realization, the gate of presence. Vimalakirti remains silent, resists the lure flapping around and right in front of him that says, oh, let me explain. Let me try and put it in words. He gives a much more direct expression of non-duality by remaining silence. Now, but if we take that as, well, there's words, that's kind of dualistic. And now we got silence. Oh, this is much better. This is non-dualistic. We just fall into a new trap of there's another duality. Right? If you've got duality and non-duality, that's a duality. And this is where this has become subtle, right? So what is non-duality in that sense? Question for all of us. It involves speech and silence. But this is the gate now, whether it's quiet, whether words are being spoken or not. If we doubt it, if we don't understand, there's something I'm not seeing here, there's something I'm not realizing, then it's practice. But the practice is letting go of trying to figure it out, cherishing some things in our experience, and pushing away other things. The immediate way through the gate, or to knock the gate over, is this still, present experience, allow things as they are, internally, externally. This is what I've found to be, this would be my clumsy answer to answer these words. Sure, he could sit silently, but even that, he doesn't say so much, right? Each of us we practice this for ourselves. But what I would like to encourage and assure you of is, as you are, as you are. Now, just as you are, just as each one of us is, we are all part of this miraculous unfolding of life. We're in the right place at the right time, and this is the awakening. Now, of course, we have challenging conditions, and we can say, well, this is not, I want awakening to look like something else. Or when things change, when circumstances change, then perhaps. But this gate is to look now, and to with that confidence and sureness that says, yeah, on a level of form, imperfect, flawed, on the level of human experience and the human condition, changing. But always there is the refuge of the unchanging, vast awareness, this vast conscious experience that we all are without exception, which is unmoving, which is peaceful in its essence, which is alive, awake, and aware, always now. That's what we find in the seat. It's what we find in the midst of our busy lives. And it's the great refuge of the Dharma. You know, this human experience we're having, well, it's just cascading on with all of its ups and downs. It's unavoidable. But it's happening in a container that is watching it play out and is at home and at peace in its intrinsic wholeness. That is the one to aware and to really come to know. Not to intellectually know, not to conceptualize, but know in the heart, know in the bones, know in the cells of the body. Because that becomes really that's the seat, this is the place of refuge. Unfolding with life. Not me in life, but me at this one as life. All of us together. And if we taste this just for a moment, or for 5 minutes of sitting, or a couple of breaths during the day, still it functions as a great salve to the to our human experience. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to pause at this point and to open it up for any questions or comment, any feedback, anything that strikes you with what I'm talking about or how things are for you, anything at all. Please feel encouraged to raise your hand virtually or above your head. You know, I can see either. If you don't usually speak, and let others speak, maybe this is the time where we could hear from you and learn something from you. Ooh, time does fly. We're a little after. I neglected to add the donation link to the chat. I told Drew I'd make him co-host, and then I labored over it and eventually did, but he was sitting by the time I got around to it. So we all know, as a sangha, let's try. It relies on our contributions when we can, appropriately. So I'll leave that with you, with us all. Thanks so much for sitting with me and for attending today. I appreciate it. It's really good to see you. Please be healthy, happy, enjoy the rest of the evening, sleep well tonight, have a fantastic day tomorrow, the beginning of an exceptional week, and on and on and on.